Okay, she's back. I've been missing because I've been sick. I've been unwell for 10 years. Anyway, I haven't filmed anything since November because, yeah, just I've got a lot of health things to figure out and I've been so exhausted, just like deep body fatigue. I haven't been well enough to read a book in like 2 months, and I'm here to talk about books. And since I have no books to report on per the last 2 months, I thought I would do a 2025 reading tag, like a year in review reading tag. Let's just get into it. Oh, I feel like I'm red and sweaty just from figuring out my camera setup. It's a chore. We're gonna start with question 1. Crazy. Question 1, what was the most disappointing book I read this year? I have kind of a weird answer for this one because it wasn't that I was expecting this book to be good and then it wasn't. It was The Little Friend by Donna Tartt. Let me explain. I think part of the problem here was that the synopsis very much made this feel, going into it, that it was going to be kind of I was expecting kind of a cut and dry mystery. And that's probably my fault. I don't talk about them, but I do read a lot of mystery thrillers on my Kindle. They're like my nighttime book. It's like my brain shut off book. I just don't talk about them very much because I don't have too much to say. Most of them aren't that good, but they're like junk food, just pure entertainment. But I have this idea in my head of what a mystery looks like, and when I read the synopsis for The Little Friend, it's about a little girl who's trying to solve her brother's murder. He was killed like 10 years prior. Now she's like, she's like 11, 12 years old. It's Donna Tartt, so very well written. If you're expecting a wrap-up, a conclusion of any kind, too bad. Honestly, I will say this. I think what Donna Tartt did was brilliant. I think she kind of made a fool out of me, and I think that was somewhat the point. She kind of subverts the mystery genre, and I can know that. You can't help but feel disappointed, you know? Like, the pain I was in for days after finishing that book, I've never felt that way before after finishing a book. I've never felt like so badly that I needed something different than what I got, that I was in my head having to, for my psychological preservation, I was rewriting the ending of that book because I just couldn't handle it. Yeah. So kudos to Donna Tartt. She did it again, I'll say that, but I think just alter your expectations going into the book if you're gonna read it. Okay, think of it as a character study. All right, that's what I should have done. I should have known, it's Donna Tartt. She has this veneer of like gothic mystery, and then that's a vehicle for something deeper, and I should have known that. But I was disappointed. Anywho, moving on to the next question. Question 2, most underdog or underhyped book. I spoke about this in, I can't even remember the videos I've made. Some past video. I fell in love with A Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Ozeki. Why? Who's talking about this? Where is everyone? This book is so beautiful and profound, poignant. The voice, the characters are so real and rich and raw, and it's about it's a dual POV. On one side we have a Japanese girl named Nao, N-A-O, Nao, and she's writing in her journal about all her struggles right now. Her dad's super depressed, and she's super depressed, and she's being bullied at school, and then she goes to visit her grandmother, who's a Buddhist monk, and develops a relationship there, learns a lot of life lessons from her grandmother. She's writing all this down in her journal, okay? flash forward to our other character, Ruth, who lives in Canada and has found this journal washed up upon the shore on the island she lives on, and it is Now's journal, and she doesn't know when these journal entries took place. She doesn't know what has happened to Now. We're reading it through Ruth's eyes, kind of anticipating like what's gonna happen next, what happened to this girl, is she okay, because a lot of times she's not okay. But it explores like the way people can be connected across time, across space. There's a lot of Eastern philosophy talked about, and quantum physics, and it like has this crazy balance between rich inner narratives and exploring these nonfiction topics, exploring Japanese culture and a little bit of history and yeah, Eastern philosophy, Buddhism, physics. I mean, it's just the way it's brought together. I feel like I got so much about this. No book has changed me as much as reading this book changed me. Like, I was transforming as I was reading the book. It was why aren't people talking about this? Please read it. 3, most overhyped book. Okay, I have to give a little disclaimer first. I consider myself a bit of a punk. And what I mean by punk is that I have an appreciation for both highbrow and lowbrow entertainment. I can love The Sopranos and also love watching Love is Blind equally and get as much out of both of them, you know? I love high literature, classic literature. I also love bad TikTok books. I do. I mentioned earlier that I read a lot of like mystery novels on my Kindle at night, and that's my brain off book. I also read a lot of bad TikTok romances, a lot of romantasy. The reason I don't talk about them is because I almost want to say it's like low-hanging fruit. Like, I read them knowing they're bad. They're poorly written. The plot structure, the dialogue, the just sentence by sentence, it's all pretty much all bad, and yet I can't get enough. I love it. It's junk food, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that in balance, you know? But at the same time, I know that there's people who like really, they don't consider it bad. They read it and consider it good literature, and I love critiquing things. I love critiquing people in my own brain, but critiquing people out loud, I don't like to yuck other people's yum. I don't actually like to be a judgy person, especially because I'm reading it and loving it. It's like the difference between books that I consider good and books that I enjoy. They're not always the same, you know? Okay, all of that being said, the question is most overhyped book. There was a book that I read because TikTok recommended it this year that I considered so bad that I don't care if I hurt your feelings, and I'm gonna judge a little bit. And that is the Pumpkin Spice Cafe. What? Yeah, Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. Oh God. The Pumpkin Spice Cafe is part of a series called the Dream Harbor series, and it's supposed to feel, it's like fan fiction of Gilmore Girls. What I would say it has going for it is environment. It has the quaint little town and the reappearing cast of characters. I watched Gilmore Girls for the first time this year. I can't believe what I was missing out on all these years. If I had watched that show when I was a teenager, I would be a completely different person. I'm in love with that show. I'm immediately starting it over. I probably will watch it over and over again for the rest of my life, like most people. And I'll be fair, this book series, the Dream Harbor series, is an homage to a really fantastic, brilliant show. But that's also where they get tripped up, because that show's too good. You have to try really hard. You have to try really hard and be really smart and put in a lot of effort to create anything resembling that town or those characters or the dialogue or the wit and the brilliance of that show. And it's not just, if I had felt that Laurie Gilmore, the author of this series, had really tried, but just, you know, that's a high bar that they just couldn't meet, that would be one thing. I don't feel like they tried at all. I feel like it was a cash grab. I feel like they knew that they had a built-in audience because Gilmore Girls is such a beloved show that if you wanted more of that world or that kind of atmosphere, that you were gonna auto buy these books and you didn't have to try hard to write a good book. These characters were so bland, and even the atmosphere, even the environment, the little town, it feels like the author was just expecting you to import your vision of Stars Hollow into her world, and so she just didn't world build. She didn't have to, because she'd let people just import, just fill in the gaps. But there's too many gaps. Too many gaps. The romances didn't do it for me. I'm offended by this series. Like, I don't usually feel this strongly, but I'm offended, and I think it was hyped for all the wrong reasons. I think people are mistaking the inspiration. They're mistaking the inspiration of Gilmore Girls for the books, and they're having a hard time distinguishing between the two or something. I don't know. I don't know what. You guys, have you watched the show? Have you seen the show? I'm a hater. Question 4. A book that surprised me. A book that surprised me was The Alienist by Caleb Carr, because I historically don't like historical fiction. My eyes just glaze over. I'm like that with history, and like history in school, my least favorite subject. I don't know what it is. I'm a fiction reader. I should enjoy stories. I think I don't trust it. I don't trust people relate history as if it's this objective story. No story is objective. Anyway, I'm suspicious of history. I think I've got a lot to work through there. But I might be coming around, because I read The Alienist for was it spooky season, whatever. It was like a Halloween video I did. And The Alienist is about, it takes place in the kind of late 1800s, at a time when forensic psychology is just, I mean, psychology in general is a new phenomenon. It takes place in New York City, and this group of ragtag, different specialists are trying to catch a serial killer, and they're using these very new, very controversial, untested techniques in forensics and criminal psychology. And so I think I loved it because, New York. Now that I've lived there, I was so immersed in the character of the place. And I think Caleb Carr did a really good job at being descriptive, not overly descriptive in my opinion, but I felt like I was there just 100 years ago. I really enjoyed that aspect. But also psychology is one of my interests. Criminal psychology. And the pacing. It was like a thriller. It was like a historical thriller, really. A historical psychological thriller. The pacing was, it was one of those books where at the end of every chapter there was some sort of cliffhanger, which I love. It brought me back to my like Nancy Drew days. Yeah, just really pleasantly surprised by that. Question 5. My favorite book couple. This is kind of sad because, like I said, I read a lot of TikTok romances in general, whatever. None of the couples stand out to me, and I'm not sure that's because they weren't good. I think at this point I've just read so many romances that, like, oh gosh, I don't know. Maybe I just didn't read really great romances this year, because the characters have not stuck in my brain at all. I mean, it's just a blur of characters as far as that goes. Anyway, the couple that did stand out to me though actually comes from one of my mystery novels. It was Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera, which is a book about a woman who years prior, she was accused of killing her best friend. She's done her best to kind of move on. They weren't able to prove that she did it, but here she is years later, kind of reinvented herself, tried to let go of the past, and there's this true crime podcast that wants to delve back into this story that she's involved with, and it kind of drags her back into her past. But she ends up having some chemistry with the podcaster, and together they kind of tried to figure out what actually happened. This was my favorite mystery thriller of the year, and they're one of my favorite couples. Maybe because it didn't feel forced, like it wasn't the main crux of the story. Maybe it felt more believable. But also there was just so much at stake, and they're a great team, and I loved both characters individually. That was one of my favorite books of the year, I think. Just like the most entertaining and interesting to me as far as my like nighttime books go. Question 6, my new favorite author. It was almost a year ago that I picked up my first Jonathan Franzen and immediately devoured, within 1.5 months, everything he's written. That was a pivotal discovery for me, his writing style, because it has helped me know which direction to go when I'm picking out new books. I'd say prior to Jonathan Franzen, I was very much dependent on other people giving me reviews of books to read. Like I had not figured out my genre, you know, I hadn't figured out the niche of writing that I loved. And I have been in the book world for years. I worked in a bookstore, so it's kind of crazy to me that it took this long, but yeah, Jonathan Franzen was that author for me. And I know he is controversial and I understand why, but I'm just really drawn to his morally gray, but in a very resonant way, just these grappling with moral conundrums that are not as cut and dry as we want them to be. It's satirical, but it managed to be satirical and sincere for me at the same time, which is a really important balance for my preferences. And the characters, I was in awe. How did you create a mind? How did you create all these different minds, all these different personalities that deeply in such a believable way? I loved Freedom. Freedom's probably my favorite book as of at this point, but I also really enjoyed his most recent book, Corrections, which is supposed to be part of a trilogy. It's supposed to be his last, 3 books that he's going to write in his lifetime, I think, and so I'm really looking forward to what comes next in that trilogy. Next, author that didn't work out. I'm gonna repeat Laurie Gilmore, because I did try to read one of the other books in the Dream Harbor series, the Christmas Tree book, but the Christmas Tree Farm. That was even worse for me. I didn't even finish that one. I don't DNF very often because, like I said, I can enjoy a bad book, but that was just too, oh man. Yeah, won't be reading any more from that series or that author, whoever they are. Question 8, the happiest book I've read. The book that made me happiest is Song for the Wild Built. If you haven't heard of this book yet, so somehow, it's very short. There's 2 books, but I've only read the first one. It's like novella sized. Song for the Wild Built is a futuristic story about a person who is a tea monk. They decide to become a tea monk, which means they travel the countryside, and they're almost like they play this therapist role. They make tea for people based on whatever ailments or whatever challenges they're suffering at the time, and they're meant to like talk to them and be there emotionally, as well as making tea for them. But they come across a wild robot, which robots are not no longer part of human society. They become sentient a long time ago, and so were released from their roles serving humans a long time ago. And so humans don't come across them very often, but our T-Monk does, and they end up going on a little adventure. And the robot teaches a lot of... This is like a parable. The robot just ends up teaching a lot of life lessons to the T-Monk, and it's beautiful. It's one of those books I was avoiding because I was afraid that it would be overly simplistic, trying to tackle real existential human problems using trite answers, but it's not. They're the kind of... It's the kind of wisdom that is the simplest answer that we forget because it's so simple. Kind of switching gears here to the opposite side. What was the saddest book I read this year? Easy, hands down, Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. However, I'm not someone who... I kind of avoid sad books. I'm sad enough, thank you very much. But my mom was like begging me to read this book for years. And so I finally gave in. I love Barbara Kingsolver. I've read her in the past. I love her. She's a great writer. But I knew that this was a retelling of David Copperfield. Yeah, David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. Notoriously a dark, grim story. And yet I also knew it would have like kind of a poignant conclusion. And that's true about this story as well. It's a David Copperfield retelling that takes place in the 90s in Appalachia. Hey, I'm editing and I don't know where Appalachia came from. I've never said Appalachia before in my life. I know it's Appalachia, so forgive me. Don't judge me. I have no explanation. The main obstacle to everyone's happiness here, the main challenge, is the opioid epidemic. Very depressing, just bleak as hell, but I love it when an author is able to explore a bleak topic, but because of who their characters are and the voice that is utilized to explore a difficult topic, because of that voice, because of that character, it doesn't feel like trauma. Contrast that with the book I'll talk about pertaining to our next question. Next question, most frustrating book I read this year. I feel bad about this one because I think it's an important book. I don't want to get canceled, but it was what is it called? Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne. It won awards. I think the story it told was important. I love that it spanned the life of one man from conception to death. He grows up as a gay man in Ireland, which is a very homophobic country. All of that important. It was frustrating because I really wanted it to be done due diligence. But like Demon Copperhead, it's tragedy after tragedy after tragedy, but because of the way it's told, it does feel a little bit like trauma porn. And that might just be me. I think there's probably more people out there who did not feel that way, and I think that's valid, but for me, it just felt... It felt like every tragic thing that can happen to a person in that situation happens, and the tricky thing is that's paired with this like insincerity, like this jokiness and sarcasm all throughout. And like Demon Copperhead was able to approach a difficult situation with humor, but it does it in such a different way that I almost can't put my finger on it. But I just remember nearing the end of my Heart's Invisible Furies being like, stop. You know that when there's that person in your life that just won't stop telling jokes, and at first it's like, oh, haha, you're so funny, and then they just won't stop, and you're like, please, can you just be serious? Please, can you just be serious for a second? It was just too much. Like, it felt like someone it felt like a defensive mechanism, the sarcasm, which could be totally valid in this situation. It would make sense for someone like this character to develop a defense mechanism like this, but it's never explored. In a way, it was just frustrating. I don't know, maybe I was just in a mood. I don't know how to describe it, but anyway, I was super frustrated. Oh, fun one. Okay, favorite book covers. Out of books I read this year, the first one I'd say is Maniac by Benjamin Labatut. This one is important to me because it seems really unassuming at first. It's a black and white photograph of a nuclear bomb, mushroom cloud. It just becomes so more and more haunting as you read the book, which I went into the book thinking it was about computer science and AI. The way that the development of computers, of the technology that allows me to be talking to you right now over the internet, how closely tied into the development of the hydrogen bomb is so, I'm getting goosebumps right now. The way Benjamin Labatut ties those together is so, like, what is this timeline? And so now looking at that cover, it kind of just encompasses what that book is about. Just like this awful power that humans have developed. I will say I didn't love this book, but Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin, just because it is a depiction of the Great Wave of Kanagawa, a beloved painting. Honestly, when there's classical art on a book cover, I'm kind of a sucker for that. But I didn't love the book. So I loved the cover of the Penguin Classics edition of We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. It has great details on the inside flaps, and the image on the front cover kind of wraps around to the back of the cover, and I just love the art style. I loved the cover of I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. This cover in particular, I just like the minimalist details and the color palette. Just, I don't have much profound insight to that one. I mean, if you've read it, it just kind of, it does capture the kind of like stark emptiness of, I don't want to spoil anything, but it is appropriate. But I also just, in general, just like the design for no reason. No deep reason. Books I thought I would love, but I didn't. I don't even want to say this out loud, but it was Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. Hey, like you, I love the Hunger Games. They are ingrained in my soul. They changed my worldview when I was 12 years old. I don't think there's anything wrong with Sunrise on the Reaping. I think it was automatically gonna be less enjoyable for me because it was a prequel, so I kind of knew how it was gonna end. It's kind of like watching all the Star Wars movies and the Death Star just getting blown up again and again and again. I know this plot. I was just really excited to read this one because I expected it to make me feel the way that reading The Hunger Games originally made me feel. It could never have done that. That's my poor expectations. But that being said, I really wanted to love it, and I didn't. I was just like, okay, here's another one. Ooh, I like this question. Book with the most interesting concept. This is definitely The Employees by Olga Ravin. It's a very small book where each page is an interview with a different crew member on this ship. Some of them are human, some of them are humanoid, and the interviews are being conducted because the intergalactic government, whatever, is trying to understand why there are some behavioral changes occurring, not just among the humans, but among the humanoids. Like, they're supposed to be pretty steady. They're programmed. Why are they acting so strangely all of a sudden? They're not performing as well. They're not following orders as well. And you start to discover that it's because of these strange objects that have been brought onto the ship that are like evoking emotions from these beings that aren't supposed to be feeling superhuman emotions. Anyway, it does cover a concept that I'm interested in general, which is our relationship to objects in the world, our lost relationship with objects, and how renewing our relationship with thingness can rejuvenate our humanity. A topic I really want to cover in some kind of video essay in the future if I can get my rear in gear. Okay, final question is about, it's supposed to be my 2024 reading reflection / goals for 2025. 2024 was a strong year in general until 2 months ago, but we won't talk about that. This was my first no book buying year. I put myself on a book buying ban and I really stuck to it. I really enjoyed this challenge. I actually, surprisingly, I thought I would struggle with it a lot. Did not. I think I already have so many books, first of all, and I got a lot of satisfaction out of knocking out and getting rid of books that I've had on my shelves for years that kind of like stare me in the face and haunt me every day and crush me and getting rid of them really felt good. And also I started going to the library for books and that has been a wonderful experience. And I still go to bookstores to browse, but I just feel so differently when I walk into a bookstore. I just don't feel a compulsion to buy a book. In fact, I feel a lot of satisfaction when I walk out without one. Weirdly, like, I think buying books was such a problem in my past that a lot of stress has been lifted from my shoulders. And I didn't know what was going to happen at the end of this challenge, like what I would decide for 2026, right? Oh my gosh, did I say 2024 earlier? Oh gosh. 2025 is the year I am currently in. What the hell was I saying? Oh yeah, I didn't know what my plans were, if I was going to continue it, if I was going to be so glad that it was over, and I would rush to the bookstore right away and buy a stack of books to make up for the scarcity of book buying this year. I don't feel that way. I actually feel like if I consider ending my book buying ban and going to the bookstore and buying a book, my tummy hurts. I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. I was buying a lot of books that I didn't read and it was stressing me out. Going to the library is so easy. Why wasn't I doing that before? I'm much less prone to just buying books because someone on TikTok or YouTube has recommended it. There used to be this like mechanism, this like Pavlovian response when anybody recommended a book. I'm like, oh, I gotta go get that. I don't do that anymore, and so like I don't just take someone's recommendation at face value so quickly anymore. I really think about what books I want to pick up from the library, or like, you know, I have to wait for them longer. I just feel like I'm much more considerate about what books I am reading, and it's allowing me to enjoy my reading more. And anyway, that's not something I want to let go of. That being said, there are some books that I do have and have had on my list that for some reason I can't get at my libraries. I've tried requesting them. Anyway, or books that I want to own. Like, there have been a few books that I'm like, they're nonfiction or something, and I want to own because I want to mark them up. And I just haven't let myself get those yet. And I think I will allow myself in those cases to buy them, but I think I am gonna at least set like a buying one book a month rule for myself. And that feels pretty good and manageable. I don't set like a reading goal anymore as far as how many books I want to read a year. I just, that feels like it becomes this extrinsic motivation to read, and I don't operate well. I don't think many people do. I don't know, some people like numbers. I'm not motivated by numbers. I'm demotivated by numbers. It just becomes so arbitrary to me, and I really want to focus on quality over quantity. That works really well for me. So as far as that goes, I'm not setting a number reading goal, but I will say if there's any goal I want to set for myself this year, it's going to be to DNF books more often. Especially the books that I own that I'm trying to get rid of. I think there are a significant number of books on my shelves that I don't need to own and I don't need to read, and I think I just need to give them like 10 to 20 pages, and then if I'm not feeling it, just get rid of it. If you really, really want to return to it years later, now I know. You can go to a library. You don't have to own it. So I'm going to kind of trust my gut more often and not be afraid of just DNFing a book more quickly. So yeah, those are kind of my reflections, my expectations for this year going forward. Not much. My biggest, overall goal in my life for this year is to focus on my health and figure out what's been going on. Finally, I'm at a point where it's like my life can't move forward the way it has until I kind of figured that out. So that's going to be my main focus, but I do have big plans for this channel. I have mega projects that I have outlined. I just so often don't have the energy to act on them, but I will definitely get to them because they're important to me, and I want to talk about a few things here. So I hope you stick around. Please subscribe. Like, I would love to keep you around, and I would love it if you liked this video. I want to connect with people. I want to feel like I'm part of the community, and I want to hear what you have to say and what you think, and I don't know. That's pretty much it. Yeah. I don't know how to say goodbye. Oh! Happy New Year. Yeah. I hope you have a Happy New Year. Bye.